Greetings, all! Today, we'll be examining the relatively common bug grass-type Pokemon Paras and its uncommon evolution Parasect, the two collectively known as the Mushroom Pokémon. While their existence might be a bit uncanny to some, as both juveniles and adults, the members of the Paras family are intriguing creatures that can help show the darker side of nature in its most terrifying glory.
Paras have orange semi-segmented bodies, with two pairs of small thin legs and a larger set of front appendages with thick clawed tips, as well as clear glassy eyes with black centers, a series of small dots in their forehead, and a mouth with white tooth-like mouth parts. They also sport a pair of red and orange spotted mushrooms that are attached to their backs. The evolved form, Parasect, have the same basic body structure to them as Paras, but their mouth parts have all but vanished from sight, and their eyes have permanently glazed over due to their zombie-like state of existence. The mushrooms on the back have now permanently fused into a single massive mushroom that dominates their form entirely, serving as the main point of control over the rest of their form. When Paras are first born, their bodies are doused in the spores of a parasitic mushroom called Tochikasu by their parents. These parasitic mushrooms grow continuously with their hosts as they grow and mature, eventually forming into distinctive mushrooms on the backs of Paras. These parasitic mushrooms are incredibly rough on the host bodies, draining nutrients from their exoskeletons and internal organs at a rapid rate. Furthermore, the parasitic mushrooms seem to have considerable control over the host's nervous system, as they constantly drive Paras unwillingly and forcefully to search for food and shelter in cool, damp places whenever possible, like at the foot of trees in humid forests, consequently making them very skittish and wary towards the approaches of any other creature except those of their own kind. To sustain their lives, Paras usually suck the juices from the tree trunks and tree roots, as they contain high enough concentrations of nutrients to keep both the mushrooms and the host Paras happy. Strangely enough, and despite this, however, the mushrooms that grow in the Paras in the Alola region rarely end up developing properly, though whether this is due to a lack of nutrient-rich food resources or a lack of moisture is currently uncertain.
When Paras finally begin to develop into their adult form, the Tochikasu mushrooms on the backs mutate and fully integrate themselves into the host's nervous system, fusing into a single mushroom in the process.
The sudden and rapid mutation stunts the physical development of Paras dramatically, preventing them from reaching any sort of adult form. Instead, their body proportions simply grow to grotesque sizes, essentially transforming them into overgrown nymphs. In turn, the parasitic mushroom grows to a ridiculous size, becoming far larger than the host supporting it. As a result of its full integration into the nervous system of Paras, the mushroom takes complete control over its host, and most of its organ systems cease to function, turning it into a zombie of sorts. At this point, Paras have completed their evolution into Parasect, and are completely incapable of ever losing the mushroom again without being reduced to an unmoving husk and dying in the process.
As a consequence of the parasitic nature of the fungus that has infected them, these creatures are able to make use of toxic spores that it releases for defense against direct attack, and are known for having unusually dry bodies as the mushrooms absorb excess moisture from their forms, giving them access to effect spore and dry skin as base abilities. Though it is noted that those that are able to maintain a higher moisture content in their bodies from living in soggy conditions can instead have access to damp as a hidden ability.
As far as the stats are concerned, in the case of Parasect, because they have been prevented from reaching physical maturity because of the mushroom, these beasts do not have much in the way of raw power in any real stance. In fact, only their base attack stat is above average for a fully evolved bug and grass-type Pokemon, limiting their combat abilities and forcing them to rely on their parasitic partner to do much of the heavy lifting to keep them safe.
The only advantages that Paras gain from their parasitic mushrooms is the ability to utilize various plant-based techniques like stun spell, poison powder, spore, and aromatherapy, in addition to the absorb and Giga Drain attacks.
However, Paras learn several relatively powerful offensive moves on their own, and their base attack stat is greater than that of their base special attack stat. Even without the advantage of moves like Spore or Stun Spore, it seems quite likely that Paras could easily survive the simple lifestyle without the parasitic mushrooms. As such, Paras were probably first exposed to the mushrooms by accident. Once the first infected Paras evolved and began spreading the mushroom spores to its young and others of its kind, it wouldn't take much for a full-blown pandemic to occur, as the bodies are not physically designed to hold up very well against resisting parasitism. This might also explain why no one in recorded history has ever seen a Parasect without a signature mushroom, as the evolution into Parasect is not caused by the maturation of Paras themselves, but the maturation of the parasitic mushrooms attached to them. It is duly noted that Parasect are actually relatively endangered because of the medicinal life-extending qualities present in the mushrooms found on Paras when they are dried and powdered. Paras are usually hunted for the mushrooms by collectors and herbal healers alike, but the latter group are usually wise enough to only take one mushroom from a Paras and not both. If one mushroom is taken from them, the spores from the other mushroom can recreate the lost partner. If both are taken, Paras usually cannot re-obtain the mushrooms unless they are young, in turn preventing them from ever evolving.
Because they are driven by the mushrooms and not their own minds, Parasect live within dark, damp areas that are beneficial to the mushroom's survival. Not surprisingly, this often puts them into direct territorial disputes with Shinotic.
They still suck juice from the trunks and roots of trees for nutritional purposes, but because of their increased size, their activity proves to be far harsher on the trees. In addition, the mushrooms tend to act with other mushrooms in a hive-like manner during feeding periods, resulting in many Parasect feeding on the same tree at one time. If the tree dies as a result of their feeding, the Parasect simply move on to the next closest tree. This also means that Parasect have little in the way of independent thought, even in regards to the survival of their species. When Parasect lay eggs, they tend to keep careful watch over them, but not of their own free will. The moment their eggs hatch, the mushrooms forces them to instantly douse their young in spores, thus ensuring the mushroom's survival through its host descendants. As with Paras, though, the mushroom does give its host the advantage of utilizing the parasite's spores as a weapon. As a result of their increased size, these spores are far more toxic and dangerous than what Paras can produce, the larger the mushroom being, the more toxic the spores are, but they still retain the medicinal qualities of normal Tochikasu mushrooms. In particular, the spores of Parasect, when steeped and boiled down, are popular ingredients in various types of herbal medication in Japan and especially China, though those that come from the Alola region tend to be inferior in quality due to the climate of the region. It is, however, important to note that the usage of the mushrooms in combat is the only area where Parasect still maintain control over their bodies. In addition, the increased lethality of the mushroom spores allows them to utilize attacks that Paras normally cannot learn, like the deadly cross-poison attack, to make the most of their offensive stats.
Oh my Arceus, I really can't help but feel bad for these strange insectoids, as their lives are all but over the moment they are born with their mushrooms. Paras at the very least can actually think for themselves and aren't really all that bad to be around, but their feeding behaviors are still controlled by the mushrooms on their backs, and this can make them a bit hard to take care of in practice. That's not even mentioning the toxic spores that the mushrooms release, but these can at least be put to some good use by trainers for the early access to moves like stun spore and poison putter that it gives these cicada nymphs. However, all hope is lost once they evolve into Parasect, as whatever mind they did have before is almost completely lost as their brains and body are taken over by the fungus on their form, and there's no going back for them. Well, this at least helps to give them a bit of extra power where they need it, and it can be really hard on trainers that love Paras to see them go like this. At the very least, though, the mushroom in control is smart enough to know when it is wise to stay close to others for the sake of survival. So even if their brains are shot, they can still show loyalty and intelligence when it comes to being near people, and can thus appear to still remember their trainers and friends. Even if this is just a ruse to help them survive and make themselves useful in battle for the sake of survival alone.
While the evolutionary pathway might be more than a bit jarring to some, the members of the Paras family can still prove to be interesting critters to work with in practice. They might not rise to the combat standards of many other beasts of their type, but they can still prove to be a toxic nightmare to handle in battle.
Just do yourself a favor, and try not to get too close to them if the mushrooms are feeling agitated. They might be docile in the presence of someone they know will protect them, but get too close as a stranger, and they won't hesitate to try and spread the virtual seeds of their own existence everywhere, if only in the hopes of taking over more bodies to ensure the spread of their deadly infection.
Thank you for watching this video. It brings me great joy to be able to speak to you all in the world each and every time we meet like this, to explore the many different facets of both the world of Pokemon as we know it, and the world as we live it, through every adventure we have with Pokemon by our side. If you'd like to, please subscribe, ring the bell and all that jazz, to keep yourself updated on content uploads and other materials of the like. You can also follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know right away when something new is uploaded, and my written works, from which most of this is based on, can be found on DeviantArt. Links to both can be found in the description down below. Remember that the world of Pokemon is a place full of wonder and mystery, and you never know what to expect. So, stay vigilant, keep watch, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Until next time, trainers and friends of all sorts, have a wonderful time.